We've got Matt, we've got Chris, Sana and Gopal. Great. Hi, guys. Well, it's great to be here, and I am so thrilled to be able to talk about the word responsible in this. I know a little bit about responsibility in technology, and I know not anything at all about AI, so you'll be relieved to hear I will be like this, and just hearing from all the exciting work that has gone on with our regions in the UK. This summit is clearly where the action is. What I've been so impressed by today is the focus on outcomes and things that feel achievable. As a kind of practical person and someone that likes to say, okay, now what? It's fantastic to hear what is happening beyond the kind of existential frontier world that is also going on in parallel to this. I'm going to hand straight over to Gopal, who is going to tell us a bit more about UK RAI. I think I got the initials right, and all the amazing work that's been going on.
Thanks, Martha, and great to be here and, on this panel and to organize this amazing event. Thanks to the whole team, the Fringe team. And also very strange to be on a panel with you, Martha, because I remember back when I was an undergrad at Imperial.
Here we go. This is making me feel 870 years old.
The first startup I invested in was lastminute.com, so...
Oh, sorry.
It's not that bad. So Responsible AI UK, so I'm the CEO of Responsible AI UK, and just to talk about the name Responsible AI UK, we initially thought we'd call it AI UK because we think all AI has to be responsible. Why should there be a difference between responsible AI and other AI? I think that's what our mission is try and make all AI responsible, and that being part of the conversation. So Responsible AI UK is a £31 million program funded by UKRI, UK Research and Innovation, for those of you who don't know. It is not the first investment in responsible AI. UKRI has invested over maybe £200 million in AI and related responsible AI technologies over the last 10, 20 years. I still run the Trustworthy Autonomous Systems Hub, which is at the center of a £33 million program that started 3 years ago. But Responsible AI UK was funded earlier this year, started back in May, and brings together an amazing leadership team, including people on this panel, Sana, Matt, and Professor Dame Wendy Hall, Professor Dame Muffy Calder, Tom Rodden, Prokar Dasgupta from King's College London, Maya O'Neill from Queen's University Belfast. And what we try to do with this leadership team, we call it, is try and bring those different voices from across the UK to make sure that we engage in these national and international conversations around responsible AI, what it means to the designers, to the developers, to the users of AI. Funding research to address the key challenges that all these stakeholders, all these parts of this AI life cycle face, and delivering that research to industry, the outputs of this research to industry, to policymakers, and also try to translate those into skills-related activities. So this program has the ambition to do all this research and to deliver these outputs over the next 5 years. So started back in May. We've already funded a number of projects, which I'm going to talk about at the end of this session. But we are there trying to bring together the whole ecosystem, trying to glue that ecosystem, which we think has been a bit split up because of the different, maybe emotional words used around AI safety, around responsibility, around regulation. Can we bring all of these actors together to talk about responsible AI, to investigate the key issues of responsible AI and address them meaningfully?
Fantastic, thank you. We're going to hear a little bit from all of the regions. I'm anxious by picking one person ahead of the other, then I might cause some kind of destabilizing to our United Kingdom, but hopefully not. And then we're going to have some time for questions from the audience, and I think at the end of the day, Ottiline Liza is going to come and tell us about UKRI, so that's very exciting end point to the summit. So, Sana, do you want to start?
Well, you picked on me. I won't have any region to talk about, but I represent London, the region of London, yes. But no, from my kind of the reason I'm here was to talk a little bit about how policymakers use the research and innovation that is created by our universities across the regions to help them make better informed policy decisions, which I'm happy to come back to, but we can move on to the regions and come back to it.
Well, why don't we start with Northern Ireland then? I'm going to pick one. Let's go with Northern Ireland.
Okay, it's the first time I've been referred to as a region. I am Scottish, but I've lived in Northern Ireland for the last 3 years. I come from a different area, and safety to me is something totally different to what it means to most of this audience. I'm an expert witness in the communications failures at Grenfell, and prior to that I worked on human spaceflight. And right now I work on machine learning and weapon systems, and I believe that some of the things that we talk about today, in particular ethics, should actually be changing the way that we do engineering. So I think engineering should be based around the concept of ethics, and that safety and security are subcomponents of that. And I'll come back to the person that had a little go at Great Britain. I think that if we have that confidence that ethics provides, that we're doing things for the right reasons, then maybe we should emerge a bit more in terms of a global Britain for the future. And I'm a firm proponent, for those of you that are policymakers, of the integrated review. And I really do think we need to have ethics to help us regain confidence as a country going forward.
And do you want to tell us a little bit about what's been happening in Northern Ireland? And some of the work. Well, I mean, not generally in relation to this. So we could be here for a long time.
Being live streamed.
The big questions, yep.
I mean, Northern Irish industry is largely based around small to medium-sized enterprises, and there's an awful lot of fantastically innovative and creative firms there. And I think the thing that holds us back in the SME space a lot in the UK is the absence of regulation in safety and security. So in most of the industries I deal with, you're not allowed to put machine learning into those applications because right now there's no mechanism or framework for regulatory approval. So just put very simply, if you put a machine learning algorithm into a safety critical environment, how can you be sure that it won't learn an unsafe behavior? So there's phrases that you'll see coming out on Wednesday and Thursday which I disagree with. So people will talk about safe by design and secure by design. I have no idea how you do that when the threats change and when systems by definition learn. So I think one of the things that will come back to the philosophers and some of the others that have spoken here is that we need really hardcore engineering to point out to people what is and what is not possible today.
Thanks, thank you. Matt, tell us about what's happening in Wales.
What's happening in Wales? So first of all, I just want to address what responsible AI is. We've been here all day. When I was growing up, my parents told me you need to become more responsible. And to me, that sounded really boring and really, really constraining. So I rebelled against that. So the key thing to say is responsible AI is not my parents' definition. What we learned in Cardiff, we had a town hall, I think, a couple of weeks ago. We had about 80 or 90 people from across public, private, third sector, government coming along to be part of that national conversation that Gopal has convened in the Responsible AI UK programme. And I think what we landed on was, if you take responsibility and just look at that first bit of the word, response or respond. For us in Cardiff, maybe because we are a nation or principality or an oppressed people, depending on where you sit, music and song is very important to us. So how does this new instrument of AI respond and resonate with our values? And I think there was a really lovely phrase that one of our panelists earlier today said, how will that let the souls of our children sing? And that was a lot of the discussion in Cardiff. It was tempered a bit, Martha, with, Wales has quite a good long history of dealing with materials that have gone out from that place and forged in revolutions. Coal, iron, where I come in Swansea, copper. But of course, we also have a very long experience of that being an extractive, an exploitive, a very dark and a very dangerous time. So the discussion in Cardiff was, okay, how can Wales, with that long history, with the desire to let souls sing, play a role in the future, which is AI? And I think, what we have in Wales is we're a devolved power. We had a members of Senedd at the town hall. And we have things like the Future Generations Act. If you haven't come across it, look it up. This is not a party political point, but it's a bit of legislation which requires all of public policy to consider what will be the impact on your children or your great-grandchildren. We also have a social compact legislation which requires workers to be involved in decisions about the future of technologies. And we heard earlier today, I think, the resonance is there that if we're going to do this right, then it needs to have every voice as part of the conversation. So during that day in Cardiff, there were lots of different perspectives, but a real heart to ensure that people are placed at the centre of this endeavour. So it was a very positive day, lots of fun, a bit of singing, and quite good food, actually.
Oh, excellent. We haven't talked about the nibbles, regional nibbles. Are you going to address
Welsh
England?
rarebit.
Yeah, so we ran a number of town halls, as was mentioned. So Glasgow, Cardiff, London, and Belfast, yes. And we could see different concerns being raised or opportunities. It's not always about concerns, but new opportunities. For example, in Northern Ireland, as Chris mentioned, there's a huge community of SMEs and this interest in regulation and regulation technology being one of the key areas where you have a number of companies that need to work across different jurisdictions very closely across the border. So can they be a center for this regulatory technology innovation? In Glasgow and London, I think lots of concerns were raised around labour rights, around the future of work, and where there are questions about whether we should, when people lose their jobs, should we turn to universal basic income, basically, to fulfill to fill that gap. And as part of that, some of the members, Eugene and F, for example, is part of this the TUC task force looking at the future of work, working closely with the Institute for Future of Work as well. So lots of new relationships being built up as part of these town halls. We've also got lots of interest in sustainability. At 2 town halls, we had these discussions around AI for sustainability and sustainable AI, because AI now is starting to feed a lot on data, and data centers consume lots of energy. Is it a good use of our energy sources? And we're starting to reflect on these themes and trying to shape our funding programs to address some of these concerns.
I was really struck. I'm president of the British Chambers of Commerce. We have 100,000 members and businesses, and I'm lucky enough I get to travel about and do fun things like go to sugar factories or go into advanced manufacturing. I even went to the biggest port in the UK, Felixstowe, recently. It's all my logistics dreams coming true, as everyone thinks in my family I put everything in boxes. But the thing that has struck me is just to your point about the kind of disparities between both in regions but also in sectors. I was in Doncaster and there was a round table for businesses there, and there just so happened to be 2 insurance companies around the table. Not huge businesses, but fairly chunky, normal SMEs. And one of the guys who was running, and they were both guys, one of the guys said, I'm planning on replacing half my team with better language models in the next 2 years. I imagine they'll be half the size by 2026. And I was like, wow, I didn't expect to hear that in a back room in Doncaster. And then the other insurance guy looked at me and, this is not critical of him, and said, what's ChatGPT? And it really rammed it home to me how not only are we creating 2-track economies in different bits of this country, but even in these microclimates, we've got these very, very different things happening within sectors.
Yeah. Maybe you want to comment?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to just add one thing that struck me, and I was at 3 of the 4 town halls, was the amount of work that's being done in each of the regions as well. So the research, the innovation, the types of challenges and problems that are being addressed. I just thought it was fantastic ability to kind of see that richness that's happening, that's being very targeted to the specific challenges and problems that are being faced within those areas. But yeah, I mean, to the question around disparities, it was one I had a meeting when I was heading up the Office for AI with some people from some leaders of a kind of grocery stores and large retailers, say. And, they sat, and they were also all men, and said, oh, we use AI all the time. This is not new for us. We use it. We have these little cards. It tracks everything. We move things around based on it, and that was great. And so I asked them what their waste was, their food waste. And they said, well, actually, you know, ours is better than the national average. It's around 21% or whatever. And I said, well, Ocado, which is an AI first company, their food waste is at 1.2%. And it's actually, apparently it's even less now. And that was a big kind of moment of, oh, you know, because you don't have to actually even go any further than that, because it's very obvious what that equates to for them. But I think there's a real question here when we say that AI is being adopted, and I hear it all the time about how people are really worried they're missing the boat on this, that actually adoption of AI isn't anywhere yet, right? And in terms of the level of adoption and how much, whether it's a bolt-on versus you've adopted it, you're considered an AI first company, so it's running your entire business line end to end, is very, very different.
Can I pick up that disparity and going to Gopal's point about this being an international collaboration? Quite a lot of the work I do is in the global south, and I was in South Africa about a month ago, and two things struck me. So here's the negative side, and you can look this up yourself. It's horrific, and it's also very obvious. But if you go, and as I did, into townships in Langer and Delft and Kailicha, and did some workshops and asked people to put in prompts about into DALL-E, the image generation, or ChatGPT, and to see what would come out. So people typed in things like, show me life in Langer. And it showed happy, smiling white people enjoying themselves. Now, why is that? Well, it's because most of the photos are coming from people who do what's called, and this is a horrible phrase, I'm sorry, slum tourism. However, on the much more positive side, the people I was working with there could see how they might use some of those technologies to create new businesses themselves, and even more insightful, gave us challenges which undermine some of the fundamentals of foundational AI. So for example, Xhosa, it's spoken by millions and millions of people. It's a fascinating language. I guess some people in the audience know it. It's underrepresented in artificial intelligence systems, but because of its structure, it asks some really serious questions about how you transcribe to train the model and how you accommodate the kind of code switching changes. And that can't be addressed just as, we'll just put a better interface on. It requires anyone who's doing research to really think about how you build and test those models. So I'm absolutely for international collaboration, not simply to make sure everyone's involved, but because they will disrupt some of the fundamental models that we will use in the future. So that's a key part, I think, of what RAI is going to be doing.
Yeah, it's a super important point. Can I ask a slightly challenging question to anybody that wants to take it? Do you think that there will be a international or even UK collaboration around what responsible means? And is that important or not?
I think there are many institutes, organizations being set up. We've heard of the AI Safety Institute. Yeah. We've heard of the UN AI Advisory Council. We have General Partnership on AI. A number of these bodies are coming together to try and define what responsible is. For me, we didn't try to unpack the term responsible because it means different things to different people. It was specifically chosen to avoid people bucketing it into a technical or social science sort of research realm. So it needs to be a broad conversation with everyone. And what we are going to focus on is where are the research questions? Where are the big, nutty research questions that we need a multidisciplinary perspective to address those? And ready to work with all these organizations to try and answer the questions.
I suppose my job is to try and give a bit of a reality check here. Yeah. I think within the political context, we can't assume that every country around the world shares our view of what responsibility is. And I think, I mean, I also serve on the National Cyber Advisory Board, and I'm struck by things like plausible deniability of involvement in cyber incidents undermines protestations from certain governments around the world that they don't actively engage in very offensive cyber activities. And I was asked to give advice to the Irish government on their review of overseas policy, and the question they were asking was, do you believe that we should view developments in machine learning and cyber as something that it is possible to regulate internationally And I said the only sane way to behave is if it isn't. Because if you act within a constrained set of parameters, what you're asking is 18, 19-year-old men and women to go and face systems that they have no means of addressing or combating. So we at least need to be aware of the possibility that there'll never be agreement, or if there is agreement, that the reality behind how nation states behave is not in accordance with how they behave here. Equally, I think we should hold firm to our ethical standards. And our ethical standards should include things like effectiveness, which means that we'll then have the confidence to be able to deploy things knowing what the effect of them would be, and being confident that we're making the right decisions. And within machine learning, that's a life cycle approach, and it changes the whole way that you view engineering. So, for example, I think into the future, we will have ethics duty holders for product that starts from the grave until retirement and includes sustainability, security, and safety within the duty of that corporate obligation throughout the life of the product.
That's very interesting. Do you see that happening anywhere? Why do you say that with such certainty?
Because I think it's happening in the military, and they're starting to really ask these questions properly, because they're right at the cusp of this. Yeah. But I'm not talking about existential killer robots.
Happening.
I'm talking about people have to prepare as if that's what other people are doing.
Yeah.
And I think so already, for instance, within the MOD, you tend to have a safety duty holder, and I think safety is one small component of this larger concept to do with ethics, which has fairness, transparency, etc. within it. But those things that I can see in the transition in the military are equally true for industry. So you could talk about a finance company, and you can see it within the kind of ethics, sustainability, and governance.
Yeah.
But I think personal responsibility for those is really important. If you're not clear about one person at the end of the day having a sense of direction over that within the company, then it's meaningless.
Can I just also come on this? I think one of the challenges with what we've seen with AI applications is that the connections to very complex supply chains of AI.
Yes.
AI being trained on data sets that are provided by universities or by people who've collected them, just put them online. Websites used by GPT, for example, to train itself, which are being curated, sort of filtered by some people. So there are other people involved in the filtering process, in that whole supply chain. And increasingly, we're going to see tools that are building on these complex supply chains. So when you talk about ethical AI, how far do you go back down the supply chain to check on this?
Yeah.
Right? Do you go back to Kenya, where someone's classified an image as being obscene or okay? Who do you go back and check with when it comes to validating the AI's performance, the accuracy, etc., across the supply? I think that's the big challenge we have with these highly interconnected, real-time supply chains.
Yeah.
It's very different from many other industries.
Yeah, no, it's really important. Sana, do you want to tell us a bit about how you're seeing this link up into the kind of policy ladder, if you like?
So, I mean, I think a couple of these things we've spoken about or has been spoken about today, and I think for me, the most important bit of getting policy right, and policy is complicated, and we have to think very kind of, I mean, to overuse the word responsible again, but you have to be very responsible in your approach to policy because it has a lot of kind of effects on the entire populace. To try and approach it well, we need to have the perspectives of lots of different groups. And when we get it wrong is when we listen only to the loudest, or the most well-funded, or the ones who are paid to come and talk to government, or whatever. But and that's where having a group like the Responsible AI UK program allows a representative group from another perspective to offer an opinion, and to do the research, and to be able to kind of come back with backed empirical evidence in terms of here's this other perspective. Now, that isn't to say that the voices of academia should outweigh other voices, right? But there should be an even kind of group of voices that policymakers listen to, one of which should be academia, one of which should be industry, one of which should be civil society, and so on. And that then allows us to kind of make a nice, well-informed policy decision. Every one of those groups have their own incentives for saying what they do, or their own incentives for pursuing a certain type of research. So we can't hold one above others, but it's important to have that kind of varied voice. And I think what Responsible AI UK does, and is trying to do, is to be the convener of that voice from an academic perspective, and also to, so more so now than ever before, make sure that the voice of, or at least the R&D that's happening in industry is also included. Because what we're seeing these days is there is an imbalance in terms of where the money is and where the labs are actually doing the research, right? And they do get quite a bad rep, and sometimes, well-deserved, sometimes not. But the research is happening in these companies now, a lot of the research. And it's important for there to be a conversation to understand what that research is, what it's finding, to kind of poke and prod at it from a different perspective. And so from our perspective, and I'd love to hear the panelists' perspective as well, is that, when we talk about responsibility, we want to include that voice as well. We want to have that voice of industry and the best organizations that are doing this research to be included when we give our advice.
Chris.
I was just going to say, one of the things that concerns me a little bit amongst all of the things that I've heard over the last couple of weeks in preparation for the summit is the lack of uptake of machine learning in government. And there's so many problems that we're facing today that would be amenable with better data, better curated and better data that we have greater confidence in from multiple data sources. And I think one of the things that, I'm coming back to the focus of this panel session about responsible AI research, is it's not just about responsibility in the artificial intelligence itself. I think the responsible view is promoting the use of AI to solve society's problems, and I don't think that's happening. A very specific example is, I don't know what the other panel members think, but I have zero confidence that we're going to meet our emissions targets. And if that's true, then we need to prepare for the consequences of extreme weather events. And the corollary of that is that you can already see patterns in the UK where fatal accidents are occurring because government and industry are failing to prepare for what you see around you today. And Storm Ciarán coming in, if you look at the Aberdeen Stonehaven accident that the infrastructure company admitted criminal liability for the last couple of weeks, I think we've got difficult times ahead, and we really need to leverage UK infrastructure to be resilient to those changes. And the focus on the impact of AI on emissions and so on is really important, but we also need to strengthen society so that our children are able to resist what might lie ahead. And I think it's reached the point where we can be pretty confident the effects are going to be fairly long-term and fairly extreme.
Yes. Well,
I
want to pick up on the children. I got 3 children. They're old, but they're still my children, as I keep telling them. And I certainly had to pay for dinner for 2 of them last night, so they're definitely my children. There is a lot of, if you talk to your children, if you have them, or younger people, there is a lot of concern out there. They've had to deal with an awful lot, haven't they? And there's some of you who are in the audience are much younger than me. The last 10 years has been horrific. And now you're hearing a lot about the threats, not the existential threats, but some of these other threats that are near and present. I think, one thing, a research challenge I'd put out there certainly to myself and others on the panel and to yourselves, is to think about how you can give the younger people tools that really allow them to channel not just their intelligence. I think there's a big problem with this focus on intelligence. Go back to the musical instrument analogy I started with. Think about your favorite violin player, or I don't know, harpist or whatever it is. They are channeling, yes, cognitive, physical, emotional, spiritual energies through that instrument, and they are making a difference. So the research challenge is the positive thing, the most responsible thing I think we can do as AI researchers or anyone involved is to really think about how do we go beyond this notion of unintelligence and allow our children to amplify their God-given talents. And then that light will outshine all of the darkness that we see around us. I think there's a big problem, and it could happen this week, that people
But you can't sing your way through climate change, right?
But what is the point of saving the planet if there isn't any joy?
So
I was just thinking, please God, let it amplify the talents of my 7-year-old's trombone lessons.
So I have two points to follow up on this one. Can I just jump in? So in terms of compute and the energy use of data centers, I'm not sure you know about this, but data centers now account for more energy consumption than the construction and maritime sector.
Yep, and airlines.
And airlines.
Cars on the road, yep.
And who does these data centers serve, right? Do they serve your Facebook feed? Do they serve your Netflix streaming application? Or do they serve the needs of the most needy in society, right? So we need to we need to have a policy around, what is the worth of a compute cycle to society, or the worth of a byte of data to society, because that's costing us energy. And most of these companies actually take the energy from renewable energy sources. That's what they claim, at least. That they're 100% green. Apple claims this, Google claims this.
But when you say these companies, I mean, the data centers store the data that keeps our energy systems going, that keeps the lights on, that keeps the NHS going, and government is one of the largest procurers of data services in the UK. So it's our data, it's us, it's everything in society. It's not Google versus everybody else. It's the fabric of what we rely on. So.
Sure, but there are some applications that do drain more energy than those government services, and that's why I'm thinking we need to have a say in how how we choose to tax maybe these applications based on not on the carbon footprint that they have, but on the energy they're draining away from more meaningful uses of energy. That's one point I wanted to raise. The other one was about ensuring the future generations are happy or knowledgeable and have an enriching experience with AI. So I like to bring up the example of my 2 children who are learning to play piano using an app that's AI powered. They are learning languages from Duolingo, which is also AI powered. And
Me too. I've been learning French all year, and I have to tell you, I've got worse.
So I was going to come to that. None of the people I know who use Duolingo actually speak the language that
I'm really good at
learning.
answering questions and getting higher up the league.
Exactly. So the way these apps work is the guy who invented it, Luis von Ahn, he built the CAPTCHA. He's really good. He's really good at gamifying experiences. And it's all about playing a game. It's not really about learning the language in the end. I mean, my kids game the system all the time just to get a few XPs to go up the, you know the story. With Simply Piano, it's the same thing. Simply Piano sometimes, the way it works is that it plays out the notes of whatever song you want to play. And it doesn't register multiple key presses. I found that out when I was watching them play it. Yeah. But it did get better, and it learned the language and everything. But what they are, again, getting used to is the idea of gamification of rewards. And is that the right thing for them, right? Do we want people to learn something? Because
okay, well, we've got lots of, these are good big questions. We've covered a lot of ground, from singing in Wales to the future of the military warfare, and now to gamifying my French lessons. So can we open it up to the audience? We've got a good 6-7 minutes for questions, and it would be great to hear from all of you. If you could say, what's your name and where do you come from? And I will be Cilla Black here on the stage. Yes, please. The gentleman here in the middle, you've whipped your hand up very quickly. Thank you.
Thank you very much for a very interesting talk. My name's Kush Kanodia. I'm a social entrepreneur. And I just want to link the talk of what we're having right now with the current reality we're facing in the world. So one of the titles I wanted to highlight is, never in Oxfam's history have we seen a humanitarian crisis like the one in Gaza. And this is from the CEO of Oxfam. So why should the rest of the world trust the UK to be a custodian for responsible AI, or for the West, where our history has shown that we've failed to be responsible, and even the current reality shows that we failed to be responsible?
Yeah.
Go, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a fantastic question, and thank you for bringing us and reminding us of the reality that has been suffered by many, many people right here, right now. I heard somebody say that it'll be okay. It'll be okay when AI aligns to human values, and then it'll all be great. I think it was Tom who told me about this, actually, one of our leadership team. And, if you pause for a moment and you think about the millennium that has gone past, and the misalignment of many values and the infliction of suffering by peoples on other people, then to assume that AI is suddenly going to come out of nowhere and align and become our savior, well, that's just idolatry. I think. Now, just because a country like the UK has had its problems in the past and will have problems in the future, doesn't mean that we shouldn't be convening a conversation. And of course, what we're doing in RAI UK, we're not government, we're not part of that mechanism. We've been funded by taxpayers to open the conversation up and to hear, absolutely those kind of challenging voices as we go forward. I've got no kind of feelings that we're going to solve everything, but the more people that can critique, challenge, and have an equal voice, the better.
Can I also add to that? People do ask me, how do we become a world-leading research program? Why do we claim this? And I like to say that we don't try to claim that we're going to solve this for the world in the UK. Mm-hmm. And I can talk about the projects we've just funded. 4 or 5 of our projects are with international partners. We have a project that's just been funded, and the list of funded projects will be on the website soon. One is with Japan, looking at emotional AI, the issues that arise when you deploy AI as companions. Another project will be looking at AI issues and regulation across the UK and the EU, so working with partners in the EU. Another project is going to look at AI adoption by SMEs across Africa. And with India as well, we have an upcoming workshop with India. So we're not trying to claim that we are going to solve this on our own. We are actually going to get everyone to work together on this. And one of the plans we have with the launch of our partner network, which will come out soon as well, is to bring in companies from across the world, not just big ones, but small ones as well, civil society, to this conversation, to bring up some of the issues that you're concerned about. And one big ambition I have is to build an alliance of academic institutes that across the world, irrespective of states, whether and China being part of that conversation as well, to ensure that all these voices are heard and we build AI that works for everyone, not just for the UK, and that tries to expand on British values.
Thank you. Great. There's someone here that had their hand up very quickly in the middle, the gentleman in the white shirt.
Hiya, thank you. Luke Christopheridis from Barclays Eagle Labs. Chris, you may have touched on this earlier, or maybe not, and maybe I misunderstood you, but it got me thinking, is there a prisoner's dilemma with AI research? Are there states that maybe are fostering irresponsible AI research? And if they are, what does that look like? Could you contextualise and maybe give that some texture? What would the risks of that be?
So the UK and the United States in particular have agreed on some, or they have very, very consistent ethical guidelines for the use of machine learning in military applications. And they include things like proportionality, which is that you shouldn't use force beyond the intended effect, so it should be absolutely minimal. Human-centeredness is another issue. And if you take human-centeredness, in many existing applications, they're not human-centered. So from the perspective of machine learning, so there's a requirement on people thinking about putting machine learning into military systems that the human should remain in control throughout. Most of the things that might be used in Ukraine and elsewhere, that's not true. Once you launch them, you don't have control over them. So they put constraints which mean that people actively don't do things today in the UK and the United States, which is technically feasible to do. In fact, technically not trivial, but relatively straightforward to do. But we've decided, and this is partly the answer to the previous question there, that we should not allow that technology to progress at the moment. I'm 100% convinced that other countries around the world, and some of them have been mentioned previously, don't do that. And they have active research projects for which those constraints that we accept and impose on ourselves are not considered relevant. That make sense?
Can I also add to that in terms of, very quickly, the technology, and some people are going around saying, oh, we should reserve this technology to only a few companies. That is not true when it comes to AI. AI is code, and people are working every day in the academic community to make this code more efficient. And you have people at Tsinghua University building ChatGPT equivalent solutions that will run on a laptop, right? And similarly at Stanford. So these technologies are going to get more accessible to more people around the world, and it doesn't make sense to just say, oh, we just reserve it to some companies. That's a false sort of argument to use.
Thank you. Great. We've got a question from a lady at the front.
Hi, thank you. My name's Resham. I'm Global Head of Policy at the Open Data Institute. We're a not-for-profit looking at an open data ecosystem, and obviously AI is a big part of that at the moment. One of the challenges I think we see, and it was touched upon earlier today, was the scale and pace of the AI research that comes out, mostly funded by big tech. And when I look at civil society and you look at the policy teams and the research teams that are kind of often working on a shoestring budget, they just don't have the resources, the people, the funding, or the scale to be able to respond at the speed and pace at which the tech sector is driving that research. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we foster responsible AI research that's coming from civil society as well, not just academia and big tech, both of which are important, but we're not seeing a holistic ecosystem when it comes to that research because that scale has increased so quickly, civil society can't keep up.
Thank you. Anyone want to take that?
I can answer that in some ways. Give some time to my panelists, fellow panelists, to think of another answer. But what I found is that we are starting to see some echo chambers forming around the ecosystem. So some people just wanting to talk about AI safety, so they bring people that think the same way and have will just build on the same story. And then you have maybe social scientists who will think about immediate issues, immediate threats, and issues of bias and they and equally on the technical side, and I come from an AI background. I'm part of this academic community that don't talk to the social scientists. So I think there's a divide here that needs to be bridged. We need to have people from the social sciences, from the socio-technical communities, coming to these conferences. Most of this technology we see that are being built by these big labs is actually published at those conferences. I see them there, but their understanding of ethics of safe AI is very different from what other disciplines would consider safe AI. And there's no venue for people to come together to talk about these things when we bring in the experts from those domains together. We are trying to fix that with Responsible AI UK. We've seen this problem in the Trustworthy Autonomous Systems program. We're trying to fix those conversations.
Yeah.
That's great. Just quickly.
No, go on.
I think we need a Civil Service Reform Act. I think we need to totally change the way that we fund and employ civil servants. I think that the degree of technical skills and technical competency is not what we need for the next 20 years. And I think that there is an overabundance, a preponderance of social scientists and political economists, and an absence of technologists. And so specifically things like the continual rotation of civil servants in key technical jobs has fundamentally weakened this country for the last 5 years. And there's a reason why we struggle to keep up with technology in terms of our policy, and that's because there's not enough technologists in government. And I think, I think there's some things, this is about UKRI, I think some things that UKRI have done which are absolutely brilliant, which is public policy fellows, so getting scientists and technologists to go in. But Go Science needs to change, and the CSA role needs to change. And there's absolutely fantastic opportunities there to strengthen this country and to make it more confident in our public policy.
Can I end with a very practical answer as well? So UKRI also funds something called includeplus.org, and that will fund directly civic society organisations, not directly just academics. So please get involved and start the conversation. Thank you.
And this is a very good point. Sorry, we don't have any time for more questions because we're going to hear from the boss of UKRI, so we have to move off the stage for Odeline. But before we do, I just want to say thank you, and also just one word. People here want to get involved with what you're doing. How do they do that? Because that's fundamental. I know.
Thanks, Martha. If you want to get involved with RAI UK, sign up to our mailing list. We'll be announcing a big funding call, £10 million for 3 large research projects, multidisciplinary research projects, looking at responsible human AI organizations, AI, looking at AI trade-offs, AI harms, and AI law and regulation. So sign up to the mailing list, join our partner network if you're an SME or a large business, and watch out for our projects. We will be announcing them, and you are all welcome to collaborate with these projects and jump in and bring us to your events, so we can come and talk about the results that we are producing.
Great. I don't know about you, I always feel reassured when you have thoughtful people thinking hard about really complicated things who are not politicians. So thank you for the work that you do, and thank you for the panel today.
Thank you, Martha.